Welcome back to the Two-Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and before we get started here, I just want to say thank you for listening to last week's episode, or a couple days ago. I don't know when you're going to be hearing this, to be honest with you. Recording this on, looks like it's, I don't even know, December 28th.
Yes.
We're going to be doing New Year's resolutions for some college basketball. We're going to call it teams, but there are probably going to be some scenarios that go down different paths. But who better to one of the best people that I trust and like in this industry and have a great relationship with, hopefully, Mr. Ryan Hammer, probably the second biggest Keontae George fan behind maybe me. So how are you, my friend?
I'm good. That's fair. That's fair. I'm good. How are you?
I think we're on the same wavelength with him. I actually don't have him at 3, which is probably where you have him. But this is not Draft Chat. Obviously, would love to have you back for Draft Chat. We'll talk about that another time. But that'll be coming back soon. This will be the first time people are hearing that publicly. So that'll be really cool to get that little sound nugget out there by accident. But today we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions. Like I said, we've both got about 3 or 4. I've got one at the end that I can't figure out how to console, and it has to do with an overreaction I had over early in the season. So just more of a last-minute nugget of your brain. So we'll get rolling here because obviously we want to stick to about an hour for the sake of my computer not frying itself. But New Year's resolution for a certain college basketball team, prospect, player, coach, whatever you want to say. What's your first one?
Ooh, first one. I don't know. I didn't think about this. So I want to start with a conference near and dear to my heart that I have backed for a couple of years now. Last year it didn't go well. I'm doing it again. It's the Mountain West Conference. Last year they obviously went 0-3 in the tournament, or 0-4. I think it was Wyoming, San Diego State, Colorado State, and Boise State. But it's basically the Mountain West. I want them to not fall off. It's not really quantifiable, and I wanted it to make this quantifiable, but I had to mention it because whether that's win a tournament game, right? Maybe that's what it is, or get 4 teams in the tournament again, because this year the conference is good, and I think it's deeper than last year because they had, like I said, 4 teams in the tournament last year. But you're looking at New Mexico, UNLV, Utah State had a good start to the year, and a couple of them have lost a couple of games in the last few weeks. But New Mexico is in the top 25 and undefeated. San Diego State is a top 25 caliber team. And I have some stats here from the past few years in the tournament. It is insane how bad the Mountain West has been in the NCAA tournament. All time, they're 22-55 in tournament games. They were 0-4 last year. They're 2-12 in the last 7 years, and they're 1-11 in first round games since 2016. And they've never had a team get past the Sweet 16. That is awful.
Yeah, I like that. How do you quantify it, though? Is the question you
win
asked.
A tournament game this year. Someone win a tournament game. How about that?
Someone do something awesome.
Exactly.
Who do you have winning the conference right now?
I like New Mexico. I don't think they're going to win. I think it's going to be San Diego State. I think they've been one of my Final Four teams since before the year. That's obviously like a dumb, like blind, like devotion to them for no reason, but I'm going to stick to it. I think San Diego State's going to win. New Mexico has been awesome. Hot start. They're ranked. I think they'll be a tournament team at this point. It's easy to say that, but I don't think they're the best team in the conference. They're very good. And I think they're going to be really good at home too. They always are at the pit. But I'm going to take San Diego State still.
Yeah, so am I. And the reason I ask you is because, I wish I had known those statistics when I picked them to make the Elite Eight and Final Four the last 2 years in our bracket show. We both did say, look, that's why, that's the whole reason you're here, Mountain West love. So, no, I'm kidding. But, I like the thought process of maybe I know you did the thing about Utah State on TikTok and understanding where they might be unbeaten, and then they just completely crap the bed.
They lost twice.
So it's one of those things. It's were they in serious contention for you for the Mountain West? Because I think they were going to be one of the more scarier teams in the tournament.
I don't think so because they had a really weak schedule they played early on in the year. And if you look at analytics, efficiency metrics on KenPom, et cetera, they weren't great. And obviously the team is winning. I think they were 10-0 at the time, maybe 9-0, 10-0. They were hot. I think they had beaten maybe a decent team or two that's half decent, but I wasn't fully convinced. And I am proud of myself for doing that this year, that I used to just overreact to everything. When Missouri was beating everybody, Kansas State is beating everybody now. I'm not going to overreact to that. Missouri beat Illinois, so let me backtrack on that. But Kansas State and LSU, they've played nobody. So I think I've done a good job at not overreacting. I did not think they were a serious team. I actually didn't, when they were undefeated 9-0, I'm still sitting here and doing my bracketology, getting it ready for the new year. And I'm I don't think they're going to be in the tournament. As of now, they would, but I don't think they're going to end up being there. So
It's a great way to look at it because I think it was very careful how unrash you might have been about it. Yeah, I'm still a believer in San Diego State. Obviously, you have your stories with UNLV and New Mexico. I think it's going to be a really, really fun conference. There has to be a team. I mean, I'm not going to back myself. Let's just not back ourselves into the San Diego State corner anymore. I want to move on for the sake of I think they've gotten what they deserve, and I'm kind of glad that you threw it in there. I had a couple that were honorable mentions or things that would have something had to get cut from my list, and that was one of them. The Mountain West is a lot of fun to watch for those that want to stay up and watch it. So I'll give you my first one. We don't obviously want to talk super much about draft, but this does involve the draft a little bit, just to be transparent with you. But with Indiana losing Xavier Johnson indefinitely, and indefinitely is the key word there because he could come back. I have no idea when. They have not been clear about that, at least as of this morning. But allow Trace Jackson Davis maybe to do more with the ball outside of 10 feet as a shooter or a playmaker or all of the above. I know there are plenty of people out there that are making they're tired of these conferences with archaic offenses, whatever. When you have a player like him who, yes, I get he's an older player and prospect, but that team, that offense, they quite frankly need him. And honestly, this wouldn't have made my list if Johnson had not gone down. So you have the freedom to play a little bit more. Now, the counterpart you or maybe somebody else will bring up is they're about to go into conference play in a really tough conference. I get it. Indiana's a team that people were – I mean, you had the people that were 13 and 15, this is where they should be. This is where they belong. This is what I believe. Then you had your Carl Heisers of the world who had them a little bit lower and were a little more hesitant. Shout out to Carl for giving me a little bit more, I guess, assurance there of where I should have been. But – just where are you, before I give you some data that I looked into that I was very intrigued by, where are you on that thought about allowing him to be more of a playmaker?
No, that's fair. I think it was, I pulled my computer, I couldn't remember. I think it was the Xavier game, if I'm not mistaken. It was the best complete game I've ever seen him play. I think he had 20 or 30 points, something like that, only a couple of assists, a good amount of boards, but they beat Xavier, and his post playmaking and presence and his poise, all the P's, PPP. His poise in the post though and playmaking out of it was incredible. He would get the ball in. I'd never seen him do that before so consistently, where I think at times in the last few years he would do that and turn the ball over a lot. But this year, especially in that, I think it's a Xavier game, I'm 99% sure. He was just great, spraying it across the court. It looked like it was passes that NBA centers that Jokic and Şengün and those guys make across the court. Not as fancy, obviously, but you know what I'm after here. I'm very supportive of that because they won that game. It was a really good game, but they were in a hostile environment on the road at I guess it's kind of a rival, but I'm very supportive of that.
Yeah, it was the Xavier game. I just looked it up. It was an unbelievable showing. That'll be one that people continue to watch for film's sake. So I'm not much of a Bart Torvik guy. Bart Torvik, is that how you say it correctly?
I think so.
I think it's good in certain spots, and I also think it's really, really abused for narratives. And I think there are people out there that will use it for narratives way too heavily. But then I started playing with it this afternoon. I'm just being upfront with you and the listeners. If they've never heard of Bart Torvik, then they can go and look it up. Shout out to them because it's basically free. So I did follow me here because this is this is why I hate it, because I think for podcasts it's sometimes a little difficult.
I do the same thing for the record. I love doing this.
So I looked up with a usage percentage of 25 or 25. Let me make sure I have this right because it's a lot. So with usage of 25% or more, I did all of college basketball with at least 10 games played because we're 13-ish. And I want to make sure any injuries were cut out of there for stat efficiencies, I guess you could say. With an offensive rating of 125 or more, effective field goal percentage of 60% or more,
right?
True shooting percentage of 60 or more. That's the important one.
Yeah.
And then I threw in the 2-point field goal percentage of being at least a certain percentage, above, cutting out basically guys that don't shoot twos.
You're right.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but you have to do that for the
No, I know what you mean, yeah.
And then at least 50% minute percentage, because I do think that matters, because I think there's people that it just might be a little inflated, right?
The usage thing, you can be like a secondary unit guy, and that's fair, yeah.
So that narrowed it down to 5 people.
5 people.
Which is crazy. When you think about all of that stuff and all of the kind of players in college basketball that may fit that narrative.
Yeah.
It comes down to Josh Cohen, who's number 1, and I have it organized currently, it looks like by minute percentage, but let's not do that. Let's do it the right way. Let's organize it by effective field goal percentage. Why not? It comes down to Adama Sanogo. No shock there. Josh Cohen is second in that now. St. Francis, PA. Shout out to him. Trace Jackson Davis is third in almost every one of these stats. Just putting that out there as let's digest this data. the guy from Arizona, Tubelis.
Tubelis.
I don't want to mess up his name for the sake of being nice.
You got it.
Azulis. There you go. I've only said it a few times. Don't want to be that guy again. And then Zach Edey.
All bigs. I guess it makes sense with the field true shooting percentage. Like they shoot close twos. They don't shoot threes. So
the interesting part that I would say for cutting Edey out of it, because Edey fits the bill because he's 7'4". Like let's just cut him out, right? Like he's clearly supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Right. And then Cohen, for the sake of I haven't watched any Josh Cohen.
Neither have I gotta be honest.
So Sanogo, Davis, and Tubelis, right? You have 3 guys that are capable, right? Sanogo is shooting 42% from 3 this year. Keeping all those efficiencies there together, right? In that same vein. And this is the part that threw me off, was Tubelis at 42.9%. They're shooting the same percentage.
Have they shot like 3 for 8 or something like that? Or
6 for 14 for Tubelis, 9 for 21 for Sanogo, but 0 for Trace Jackson Davis.
Yeah, no 3 ball, yeah.
So I'm just bringing it up for the sake of that data might mean absolutely nothing to the 98% of people that listen to this.
Yeah.
But I just want to dissect it for a second. Is it valid to think that like he deserves to have that opportunity based on everything we see here? That if it's Mike Woodson's defense to be like, well, he's, what if he starts lacking in other he's not. He's a top 5 player in the country in all of those statistical categories. So I guess my point is, where are we on Trace Jackson Davis? Do we think he should be able to do that more even in conference play?
They wanted Indiana. People wanted Indiana, like you said, to be a national title contender, like out of the start of the year. They were never like, however good Jalen Hood-Schifino was going to be, however good Xavier Johnson could make a leap, however important of an X factor Miller Kopp could play, whatever it is, they needed Trace Jackson Davis to be a first-team All-American. They need him to be a first-team All-American if they want to win the Big Ten, if they want to get anywhere near a Final Four, which I don't think they are because of their guard play. And I don't think Trace has been that, like you said, like, yes, he's probably a top 5 player in college basketball, but there's probably 10 to 15 guys that I'm like, they've been more impactful and they've done better. Jalen Pickett, random guys that in the Big Ten, like that's not okay for Indiana, especially with the injuries and stuff like that. I think I'm very with you. Like if he hasn't shot a 3 all year and he just shoots a 3, like if I'm the coach, I'm fine with it. If I'm Mike Woodson, because you have to let him go. At some point, you have to let him go, and the system is just not going to be the system. So.
Yeah, if they want to win the championship, or if they want to make a run of any kind, they have to lock him. That was more of like I know I'm right about this, but how polite can I be as a podcaster? And see if you were with me on that. So I'm done on the Trace Jackson Davis thing. I think there's a more interesting conversation there when it comes to a draft sense, but I think I'll leave it at that because as college basketball stands, I think that's where I stand with Trace Jackson Davis and what they should be doing with him. What's your next one?
This one is not aimed as a draft thing.
Okay. It can be.
It's about a freshman, a big 5-star freshman. So like, you can take it as you wish, and it ties into both. My thing for Dariq Whitehead is to score 20 points in a basketball game. 20 points in a game. He has scored. I wrote it all down to make sure. He's hit double digits one time. He scored 15 in the game he started. I think it was in the last couple of days. He has dealt with injuries. I get that, and I think he was sick one game. He's only played 9 times. But if you're the number, whatever it was, I think it was he was 1, 2, or 3 in every kind of consensus ranking. You need to be able to score 20 points in a game. Nick Smith came back. He scored 20 in the first game he actually fully played in. And I think he did it in back-to-back nights. Like, these are things that Dariq needs to do, and Duke needs him to do. It's the same with Derek Lively, honestly. Like, Duke has not been that good this year, and they're not going to be a half decent in March if they can't get those two. They're realistically their 2 best players to play like their 2 best players. Dariq, again, only started 1 game. I think Lively's only started like 4 or 5, but they need those 2, especially Dariq, to be what they're supposed to, any half of what they're supposed to be if they're going to be decent. And Dariq needs to do it for his draft stock too.
So for the sake of backlash on the fact that my big board's coming out in 4 days, I'm just going to leave it at the fact that I'm going to save the draft stuff for another time because I think it's a conversation we should have when he does it, and then we're both sitting here in March or April or whatever month we do it again, and we go, you know what? That, it is what it is, right?
I'm not going after him. Yeah, exactly.
No, exactly.
I just want him like score 20 points in a game. Score 20 points. They probably play BC and FSU and NC State and Louisville. Like, score 20 points in a game.
Not even that. It's just, and that's why I wanted to take a step back and let people understand that there is a line you can draw between talking about a prospect and talking about what he can do for his college basketball team, whether he's a freshman or not. We'd be asking the same thing from a guy that's a junior, right? Or like a Roach if he was doing the same thing.
Right.
But I'm with you. I think for the sake of not, like, I don't have a ton to say about it because I think there is a lot to break down there. I want to be careful in saying that, like, yes, Duke absolutely does need him. That Wake Forest game was embarrassing. Like, it was less of a coaching thing. I think people overblew that a little bit. Shire's a new coach. I get it. But no, if you have a guy like Derek Whitehead who has the scoring ability that he does have, that he has not done, is the key there. I'm with you. I think that Duke needs him, and if we have time at the end, this ties into my ACC point I want to make at the end. So I think I'll save it for that if we have time. But just Duke does need him, and I'm with you there. I don't think there's anything more deep than that. He just needs to score 20 points at some point. I am there. Like, I'm all with you. Like, it sucks because I want to evaluate him tougher. But it's anyway. It's
the last thing I'll say about it is I just thought about this, not to this bad of an extent. It reminds me of Harry Giles, and when he was in college for a year, also he played 26 games, started like 5 or 6 games, and he only scored like 4 points a game, but it's not that bad. But top recruit, and people did question last year. Like, some people were like, "Oh, should he be a top recruit? Nick's better, Keontae's better, all these guys, Lively and stuff." But I don't know, whatever. We can move on from that. Yeah.
No, it's a good one. I like it, especially for the sake of the way Duke. I mean, Duke has aspirations every year to try to win the national title, whether they have Derek Whitehead or whether they have Jeremy Roach. Like, they have both, and they have no reason for not. And I think the coaching will be important. I think that's my final point.
For sure.
So this one we don't have to spend forever on because there's still a lot of uncertainty around this, because I haven't publicly said anything other than one video, so I'm just going to be transparent. Like, Texas needs to work on creating a better team culture. Like, it is what it is. I don't want to turn into the two of us being FBI agents, but like, it just needs to be said, which is why I kept the ACC one at the end, just to be like, if you don't have anything to say, I respect your opinion as a journalist or whatever you want, a bracketologist, whatever you'd like to call yourself for the sake of this conversation. But having Arturo Morris obviously get charged with a misdemeanor in June and then have this thing happen with Beard 2 weeks ago, it's just, the basketball thing aside, like, they're a great team. Your tweets and stuff alone were buying me in. Like, I was like, I'm in on Texas, this Gonzaga thing. Like, just everybody surrounding that whole week there that they had. And for it to crumble in a matter of days is just, it sucks as just a fan of somebody that wants to see the right thing play out.
Yeah, and their staff is going to be fine. Like, obviously, you hope nothing happened as a person, but also as a head coach. He might be back at some point. I still think he's out indefinitely until, I'm not really sure what's going on, but
indefinitely is what we know.
Yeah, I think that he'll be back at some point this year. I think, because I think things are getting dropped or possibly, and like, I will say this, as bad as it sounds, whether something bad happened, whether something he did right or wrong, whatever happened, like, these things have happened before in college athletics, especially in professional athletics too, but college athletics, things get pushed way under the rug. We know that through things like NIL and pre-NIL, like little things like that. But this is like way beyond it. And like you said, like, we don't need to go, we're not going to be FBI agents, but if this something happened with a player, whether it was on campus, off campus, at home, whatever, and your head coach also, like, it starts at the top. You can't even this cannot even be a word, a whisper of anything. Like, even if someone was making it up, they'd make it up for a reason. Like, this is honestly inexplainable. I feel like I went on a rant. I just got really heated in my head, but it's not okay. Like, as a former college athlete, like, and my head coach was like so intense, but he was a great guy and he built culture into us. Like, I valued that so much, and like keeping that from the top bottom and making sure everyone is like bought in, and clearly, like, that's not okay. And I think the players are fine. Timmy Allen, Marcus Carr, Dylan DeSue, the vets are going to control them fine. But at times, like, it might crumble later in the year, and this could be why. So,
yeah, it's, at the end of the day, it's just holding a program that we value as fans, as media people, as whatever you want to label us or whoever as. It's just the expectation of a program that is such a high class otherwise. So It was just more of like, hey, carefully just work on it. Just fire somebody, figure it out. I don't care. Just work on it. Yeah. What's your next one? A little bit more positively, hopefully. If there's a
mine's a positive one. Whenever we talk about Kentucky, it's always positive, right? Just kidding, it's not. But my New Year's resolution for Kentucky. Now, I will say, as of recording this, they play at Missouri in like an hour and a half. So they might win that game. I don't necessarily classify that as like a super high quality game. You could argue Mizzou should be top 25. I think they're actually 25 in my ranking right now, only because of the wins. They beat Illinois. Like, that's a big win. But I still don't buy into them being like this great team. So my thing is for them to get a quality win. They are currently, I'm just pulling this up real fast. They're currently 8-3. They have the good teams that they have played. They played garbage teams, and then they lost to Michigan State. They lost to Gonzaga. They beat Michigan. That's their only quote unquote quality win, but it is not a quad one win right now. It's a quad two. So they don't have a quad one win. As much as I don't really care about the net ranking all that much, it does matter a little bit. They lost to UCLA. They play Missouri, Louisville, LSU. I don't count any of those games as what I'm talking about. But then they go to Alabama. They go to Tennessee all in January. They play Kansas at some point, even Florida, Arkansas. Like, win a game like that, because people are doubting Kentucky right now for a fair reason, and they have to get real wins. It's like North Carolina last year. They were an 8 seed because they had a decent record, but every good team they played, they lost to. And they didn't really beat any great teams besides Duke in the one game later in the year, I think it was. But that is like a flaw in Kentucky's schedule, I guess. They played such garbage teams for the most part, outside of like 3 games that they lost all of them. So
you brought up I was about to ask, but then you started bringing up who they are going to play in the future. I don't have the quad stuff in front of me, but I think it is important. I think I'm with you, but I guess my thought process to have an honest dialect is they haven't had a chance to, yes, obviously, but are you a doubter in those games against Alabama? Like, are you thinking like, okay, this is not a Kentucky team built to win these quad one games? If so, what's the deficiency?
I think they rely too much, and this is not like he's great, because Casey Wallace is great, but I think they rely he matters too much to them. Oscar's going to do his thing. Severe's been inconsistent in performance and in health. So like that kind of sucks. It is what it is. But last year they had Ty, and like Ty was a great balance to Severe, but Kaysen's also like the lead guard that Severe likes to be as the playmaker, and Kaysen could score. He's had like a couple of 25, 30-point games, and he's awesome. But you can't rely too much on one freshman guard and Oscar. And I think that came back to bite them last year. Chris Livingston hasn't lived up to any hype, and I think he needs to slide to some kind of more physical presence at the 4 instead of the 3 and all these things. But I'm not really bought into Kentucky this year. I'm even less bought into them than I was the last few years, and like especially last year. And I thought they were good last year, but I thought they were going to lose second round of the tournament to Murray State. Obviously, the St. Peter's thing is what it is, but I don't know. I'm not bought in at all, and for a lot of reasons. But I think that I'm even less bought in because they haven't beat anybody. So.
Well, I'm not in either, so that was the whole reason I brought it up. I just wanted to see how far. Like, I think they can definitely be. I think they're capable to beat Alabama, and
they can. They can beat anybody. The talent they have in the team, they can beat anybody, and they will. Like you said, like Kansas is. If Kansas is home, especially at the Allen Fogg Fieldhouse, might be tough. But like
it's play. There
you go. It's like that's a game I could see them winning, and then people are like, "Oh, Kentucky's back," and I'll be like,
y'all think that? Here we are, just being like a little careful.
People will take Kentucky every year, especially in the tournament when they do the brackets. They could be a 7 seed, 16. People are like, they're Kentucky. They're not going to win. So
right, and that's the thing. Like, I really like about this conversation about them is because sometimes this happens, and I can't think of a perfect example. If you think of one, please chime in. But they've had years where we're just like this with them. Maybe not a quality win. Maybe they lost that quality win early in the season in some kind of challenge, which is hard to gauge.
Right.
But they are a team that likes to get rolling in January, February. It's really just some of the bill with the way they are. I don't know, and I don't understand it, and I don't like it. But it also makes it really hard to evaluate their prospects and understand, like, okay, I get what I'm seeing so far, but let's say they lose the Kansas game. Like, I'm not going to be any less out on them because I think that game probably will be close regardless. Because
that's a tough game, right? You lose Kansas,
but I think they're built to play Kansas well. I think that's a good matchup. The Alabama one, the ones I'm interested in. Whether you believe in them this year or not, it's not like they're not having DJ Wagner and Aaron Bradshaw just walk in the door next year. So this team will always Kentucky will Kentucky.
Yeah, the floor is always there for these kind of teams,
Correct.
Talent, whatever, and like
it's a great way to word it.
I actually don't knock. People hate Cal because like he only won one title. Well, like first of all, there's like 360 teams. It's hard to win a national title. Right. Obviously, they're not all contending for
68
one. 68
team tournament, mind you.
Right, and like it's not that easy just to win a title every like 3 years, and so few teams can do it. But they won it. I think 10 or 11 years ago. They've been to like Final Fours and national title games and stuff like that, and they've had their down years. But I actually value Cal as past the recruiter, the developer of people and young men that he does. But as a successful basketball program, I don't think that that's coming anytime soon.
I'm with you. I like the point about Kentucky. So let's see. All right. So we talked about this a little bit earlier when I brought up Sonoga, but my New Year's resolution, I'm trying to figure out how to quantify. I like how you've really tried to quantify these. I'm glad we went down the same. Like how do I say, like Texas, that was easy. It was like this is the thing you work on, right? The Xavier or the Indiana thing was tough, but this one is just easy. The rest of the Big East is my theme, And then my resolution is let's figure out how we could stop UConn, because I'll be honest, I've been out on UConn as late as I possibly can be. Watched them really, really intently the last 4 games. I'm in for the ride. So the reason I'm in for the ride is because there's a lot to unpack, obviously. But again, I was one of the last people to join into this is really a top 5 team. Yeah. So there's only 3, and I'm careful about how much I dive into some of this stuff, but I also think it's important now because it's almost January. There are only 3 teams as of today, Big East teams, that are inside the top 40 in KenPom. Yeah, that's what first thing I said was, wow.
Oh my God.
Interesting. That's as of right in this moment, and I have it pulled up just to be safe, just to make sure I'm not for adjusted efficiency margin, obviously. So, and I don't think about it too much, but it's more about it's going to help us create this dialogue. So only 3 teams, Creighton, and I have them for you for the context. Creighton at 24, who, regardless of how Creighton's went, they've literally never been, I heard it today, never been higher than 19th, never been lower than 29th.
Interesting.
In this last, in the stretch that they've been losing.
Takes injuries into, it's okay. Yeah,
it's really good. I think it's a great metric.
Yeah.
Marquette 25th and Xavier 28th. So the question I want to lead this with, first of all, is let's figure out the resolution is figure out how to stop UConn, because they're just going to run away with the conference at this point. But I don't think it can. I think somebody can do it. So my question for you is, any team outside of those 3, Creighton, Marquette, Xavier, that I named, can they reasonably be the team that wins the Big East, and why? I guess
wins the Big East, no shot, not a single chance.
So it's those 4.
I thought you were going to say to beat UConn one time. I was like, yeah, I think there's a couple teams, but
fair.
There's no shot that another team wins the Big East. Like, I actually like St. John's. I've been wishy-washy throughout the early parts of the year.
Yeah.
Even Providence, I'm never really super in on. And I'm scrolling down the teams. I'm like, there's no way. There's no chance.
Okay, so now that that's out of the way, that was just to understand where we got the barometer, right?
Yeah.
So now, I guess I don't have a question for the Creighton Marquette Xavier cluster, because I want to talk it out. What can these teams do to be? Because I still think, I picked Butler as a long shot to eat. I like Butler. I'm gonna bury that one. Okay, it is what it is.
It's terrible, but
it happened, right? It's okay. I got excited, whatever. Right. Last year I picked Xavier to be my dark horse. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Title dark horse, whatever. Right. So the point is are any one of these teams in better position to take down UConn for the year?
If Ryan Kalkbrenner is healthy, obviously that's a whole part of of their defense really creating, and they've shown without Ryan Kalkbrenner, they literally cannot win games. It doesn't matter who they're playing, they cannot win games. They'll lose to anybody in the country.
0-4 without him.
Right.
0-5, whatever it is. Yeah.
And they've played a couple of bad teams they lost to, and they've got mollywopped also. They got absolutely destroyed a couple of times. And but healthy Creighton, again, I can say that about a lot of teams, but healthy Ryan Kalkbrenner, fully ready to go. He's not as good as Sanogo. He gives Sanogo enough of a challenge to put the game in the hands of Tristan Newton and Hawkins and everybody else, and Andre Jackson. And I think that's a game you'd rather play than if you're getting dominated by Sanogo and then Tristan Newton starts lighting it up and then Andre Jackson starts doing this. You're like, well, that's how we lose, and that's how they win every single game. It's not as simple as stop Sanogo, because that's not easy, but I think Creighton does match up well against them personnel-wise. I think they will get a win on them. They'll beat them in one of their 2 matchups, and if not a third matchup, they'll probably have to play at some point. But then I don't know. Villanova, they play tonight. I think Villanova, but I never want to put Villanova down yet, but they're not going to be able to beat them. Xavier, I think, is very underrated. I actually think they could beat them for sure. I think UConn's next game against Xavier is at Xavier. Yeah, New Year's Eve at Xavier on noon on Saturday. So I think that's a decent game, one to look out for. But I just don't the Big East. I've never been a huge Big East fan at all, in the years, but this year I don't buy into it at all, and the metrics support that. So.
You mean recently, as in the last 5-10 years, right? Because the whole Big East was so much fun, right?
OG Big East is incredible. Hold on, let me. Yeah,
I just want you to
growing up. We've grown up exactly.
Yeah. I lived in North Carolina, and I was watching the Big East as a kid. Exactly. It was fun. It was amazing. I need to finish that book. I can't think of the name of it right now about the historical Big East, but it's somewhere, wherever the frame is. It's somewhere behind me, or on the other side of me. But all right, anything else about the Big East that you just had to get off your chest in a podcast setting? So I think at this time I'm with you. The conversation was a lot simpler than I made it, but I just wanted to understand when Xavier wins the Big East, we go, okay, that's.
I don't hate it. I don't think they will, because I think they.
Or Marquette.
they'll drop games. And Marquette, I'm surprised they're in the top 40 in KenPom because KenPom is usually pretty
25th.
reliable. KenPom. Marquette, I have the same feeling as Mizzou. I am not bought in. They destroyed Baylor, but I don't buy that as Marquette's really, really good. They destroyed Baylor. I buy that as, man, Baylor just got to like wipe this one away and just move on to the next one, because it's the same thing with the Illinois game against Mizzou. I don't think Mizzou is a better team than Illinois. Illinois's got their own issues, obviously, but I think Illinois just like, all right, just like the Penn State game, we got to like push this one behind us and go on, because we're far better than that. But good for those teams for getting a win, right? Good for Marquette for getting that win, and that put them on the map, but they shouldn't be. They're not a top 25 team. They're not even close to it, in my opinion. So,
all right. Now that that's settled, I think the Big East is still going to be really fun to watch. But yes, I'm with you on a lot of
it's always fun. It's competitive, right? Because there's so many teams that are just like there.
You really only have one stinker in Georgetown, and it kind of sucks. I mean, Patrick Ewing is the only sore spot that they've had this offseason, not firing him, but that's another conversation for another day. Who's your next? I believe this might be your fourth one.
I have a couple. I'm gonna go with the home state one, New Jersey, Rutgers Scarlet Knights, my beloved Rutgers basketball team. I'm not a Rutgers fan, but it's hard not to root for them sometimes, unless they're playing Maryland, of course. But
they're in the backyard, right? I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Friend of the program, Rutgers is 8-4 right now. They are 0-3 on road and neutral games. I want them to win a game outside the rack, or they call it Jersey Mike's Arena now, but it's the rack.
It's the rack.
Win a game outside the rack. Rutgers has historically, in the last almost decade, but really 5 years, been one of the best. They've been the best team in the country at home relative to how they are outside of their arena and how good they actually are, right? They've beaten Purdue. They've beaten so many caliber top 25 teams and ranked teams at the rack. They don't do well on the road and at home, and that's what NCAA tournament comes down to, and that's what you're playing for ultimately this whole entire season. So they need to prove to me, and they don't need to prove to me, who am I to them, but like, I want to see them win a game outside the rack if I'm going to have any confidence in them to do anything again. But I don't expect them to, but I think they play Purdue, Michigan State, and a couple other really good teams in January on the road, and those are tough games. So I want to see them win one.
Yeah, I'm going to give you that one because I'll be honest, I haven't watched much Rutgers basketball. I watched more last year.
I don't expect you to.
Were they the team? Didn't they have a lot of quality wins on the road last year, and they were part of that luck conundrum, or was that
their
Providence?
Luck thing? Providence was the luckiest team in the country last year.
Yeah.
Rutgers had beaten like IU at home. They did this year also. They beat Purdue when they were number 1 in that buzzer beater. And
that's right.
That is luck, though. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I remember. Is I was like, okay, like I'd love to have this conversation after I've watched some more Rutgers basketball. I'll be honest, but it's hard. There's, like you said, there's 360 some odd teams, and I'm gonna miss a couple in a conference that it's gonna matter more in a few weeks.
And they're playing on like Big Ten Network once every like 3 weeks, and that's it. So
yeah, it sucks. Like I get the Big Ten Network in this area for some reason. Like I get it on whatever package I have, and then it's always like Michigan State and like
Northwestern. Yeah. Oh, they play Northwestern too, Rutgers. They go to Evanston, win that game. Win that game.
It's a huge one. I'm with you. I think just Big Ten has some of the toughest road basketball this year and historically, so I'm with you. I think that's a good one. Do you have? You said you had a couple more than 4, so if you have another one to sprinkle at me, maybe I'll have more thoughts on. But I like the shout out.
The other one was I have 2 more, but one of them was like really the important one is Illinois. I mentioned them before. Is no quantifiable thing. Any kind of consistency, literally anything. I'm gonna read.
Are you talking about Terrence Shannon, or are you talking about? Oh no, you're talking about the team. My bad.
Terrence, I like Terrence too. I like Terrence, but yeah, and like Brad Underwood's also got to like find like a Xanax or something like that. I don't know. He's got to relax. But the consistency. They beat UCLA, and they lost to Virginia, and they lost to Maryland, but then they go to beat Texas when they were number 2. When Texas was number 2 in the country, then they get whopped by Penn State and again by Missouri. I've never seen that kind of inconsistency in the out of conference schedule. It's insane. It's insane.
I like Coleman Hawkins. I'm a fan, and I think I'm going to like him even more come June 22nd, I think is the date I'm looking at. I'll leave it at that. But I am with you. I think there's more to be peeled back with Illinois, with the team that we had to taper some expectations on preseason, I think, a little bit. There's a lot of teams that were like, okay, what am I getting from Illinois, or what am I getting from Iowa? And what Iowa's another one that I kind of have in that same vein with the inconsistencies all over the place.
The
right?
Big Ten is all like that. It's all like that.
Yeah, and that's it's less about in Illinois. It's more about like let's see this conversation about Illinois and Iowa and all those other. Let's see this conversation in February, around Valentine's Day, when they've had a chance to beat the crap out of each other and see if there's any consistency there. Like, I mean, it is what it is. Like,
That's a good point.
I'm not going to know anything more about any of these teams until they beat the crap out of each other and somebody has been more consistent.
Right. And
I would lean not Illinois would be my
right.
I'm with you there. I would lean not Illinois.
Yeah. I was literally working on making a video about this. I didn't know how to word it, so I didn't end up doing it. The Big Ten, Purdue is obviously this, let me put quotes around this, elite team. They're really not like a top 3 team in my eyes right now, but they are. Like, I can't deny that they are.
Eggshells, Purdue fans, eggshells.
Right. And no, I think Purdue fans have actually been pretty fair with that.
Okay.
In the times that I've talked about them publicly and we've had discourse, like Purdue fans are like, yeah, we're going to lose a game or 2 in January. And that happens. Big Ten scheduling is tough. And like you said, when you have to go to Assembly Hall and then 3 days later, you have to go to the Breslin Center and you play at Michigan and you play Maryland and you play Illinois and Iowa, all these
bloodbath.
And there are so many, like,
bloodbath.
Every team is just barely above average, in my opinion, in the grand scheme of power conference teams. And then there's Purdue. And I think when Purdue loses a game at Michigan State and then loses like against like a Penn State or like a weird game like that, or even like a Rutgers, right? Then people are gonna be like, all right, Purdue's not that good. And like every year, it's just gonna be 10 Big Ten teams like that. And like, what do we do with them?
Which now, you know what? Now that we say it out loud, that would make sense why people picked Indiana to finish ninth sometimes. It's like, well, okay, maybe there's just 9 average teams and they're all fighting to be the least.
They're probably
average. I don't know.
They're probably
best
had
of
8 or 9
average.
plus tournament teams.
That's crazy. It just, I like how you said, and obviously that might be a Purdue fan speaking. You're like, well, yeah, we're going to lose a couple games in January. I'm not worried about you losing games in January. I'm worried about you being a top 5 team now, and then we look at you in March and go, oh, you lost the first round.
Why are you ranked number 20 right now in the country? Yeah.
Or like, why did you lose your first round matchup as a 3-14? Like, that's what I'm worried about ultimately with Purdue. Like, I think it's a team that should be making a run, but then if we're having these question marks in January, but they're a top 5 team. I'm going off. AP poll aside. AP poll aside. Okay, I'm taking what I have now and going, how will it translate? And will it translate to the fact that they're probably going to be one of the first 3 seeds to lose, if not the first one? 3, I'm just
they've been before. They've been before. So
that's what I'm saying. I think it sucks, and I think the Big Ten. If you're just a Big Ten fan, which there's probably not a lot of those out there, like just a conference fan, I'm sure there's some. Like, we're Mountain West fans, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
But you're probably pulling your hair out, and it's just one of those things. And like, I like that you brought it up because the Rutgers thing ties into this and that.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that one. I'm going to go to the team or the conference in my backyard because I think it's funny how that happened. I figured this is the perfect time to bring it up. I'm gonna pitch you one of them, and then we're gonna have an open dialogue about the other part of it because I'm genuinely curious because I think there's more to unpack about this team. UNC, team that probably should have won the national title last year, but Kansas was just better. Just leave it at that, and I'll keep moving. New Year's resolution I brought up was getting Pete Nance more touches that fills a scoring void at the 4 that the Hills apparently desperately need to win down the stretch, even though they have won games recently, big ones against Michigan. Whether you think about that. About Michigan aside, doesn't matter. But is Pete Nance the biggest New Year's resolution for UNC would be my question for you, or is there another one that you have? Would be the way I want to pivot.
I think it's a fair one. What was the game? It was one of the PK games. I don't know if it was the Bama game or not. He was, when I say the worst player on the floor, I love Pete Nance. I said he should have gotten drafted. He should have gotten drafted last year. I think it was. I don't remember his stats, but I remember watching the game and I was like, oh my God, he is the worst player on the floor. Why is he still on the floor? And I like I said again, I'm a very big Pete Nance fan. I thought he should have gotten drafted last year. I think he's worth like an NBA role and stuff, but he was so bad. And like, yes, he still needs more touches, consistency, because I think he had those touches in that game for one of the first times in the year. So he was just like, I'm just going to let it fly and stuff. But he was turning the ball over. He's playing no defense. He has been so bad on defensively that how can you be on the floor to play offense if that's what you're going to offer on defense? I think that's a big problem. That's a big problem for them. But I think the backcourt is more important because they're playing 30 plus minutes a game. I think they need to balance out RJ and Caleb more. I think they need to say, RJ, you're the lead guy in the offense, and Caleb, we want you to play a little off ball. We want you to be the scorer and stuff like that. But when you're not on, we need to fix that. Hubert Davis lets them play pickup and ISO ball way too much, and he lets the ball be in Caleb Love's hands at the end of games. We've seen it before last year. We've seen it every time this year. It's painful to watch, and they need to stop doing that.
See, we're going to have time for my last one eventually because you know what? You said everything that I haven't been beating a dead horse on for 2.5 months.
I need some water. Oh, my God. I was ranted for so long.
Like I'm just glad I know there are people out there. And look, you're not in any I'm trying to figure out the way to word this. You don't live here. You don't hear this stuff. You know, you don't see the stuff even more detailed. The way people talk about this team, there's never been a more negative connotation of a team that had. By the way, number 1 in the AP poll to start the year. Just throwing that out there if people might have forgotten. And then a team that went from an 8 seed to a title runner-up. There's never been more discord. Like, what's the St. John's, right? Like, obviously, I'm thinking of the best team near you. I'm just thinking of throw out there. But, like, think of what the discourse would be if that happened to a team in your backyard. Like, you would hear it. You would,
everywhere.
Just the local media, everything around it. It's pretty bad. The Michigan win, honestly, if they'd lost that Michigan game, I might have had to move because it's like people will tear this place down. It's bad, and I wanted to bring up the Pete Nance thing just as like a bridge to like there are definitely deficiencies in this team, and the only reason I'm not just like freaking out is because what did they do last year with basically the same team?
Yeah,
they made the national title. Oh my God, I've picked them in every national title question or conversation I've ever had this year, and I'm not going to back out on that yet because guess what? Conference play for the ACC starts this week, and it's going to be really starts. Obviously, some teams that play 1-2 games, but really starts, and it's going to be awesome. And I'm super excited to see how they improve. I think the home court presence, I think the fans are going to be pissed, quite frankly, and I think that home court presence might actually matter this year because the Dean Smith Center has not been, as of late, I'm just being careful, has not. I don't want to get shot in the foot here, but the Dean Smith Center has not been a home court presence for them the last couple of years. It has not been the same rum and raw and whatever you want to call it. So, but to beat Nance, obviously, just for the people that want to care about that, like 12 points a game, 6.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, or 1.8. I'm rounding.
It looks better on the stat sheet than it actually is, I think.
It does because the efficiencies aren't bad. Like he's shooting 50% from the field. He's shooting 33% from 3, which is only 2 points lower than his career average with a lot more shots on the board there across the board at Northwestern. And then 81% from the line on only like 6 or 7 attempts. So it is what it is. Yeah. Let's get to the line more than I thought he would.
Yeah, I didn't think that. You also want those efficiencies to be a lot higher because he's in a much like I don't know if you're on Basketball Reference, but you can scroll down to advanced and see the usage rate year by year.
I had it written down and then I deleted it because I didn't think I was going to need it. 17.9%.
Compared to what was probably 25 to 30 at Northwestern.
26% last year at Northwestern, 20 the year before, 20. Yeah, so basically.
So 26, right? The last year where he was like all Big Ten caliber player and running the show. But when you leave, we saw at the transfer portal, so many guys were leaving from smaller schools, bigger roles, going to bigger schools and smaller roles and being a little fish in a big pond, the opposite. And your efficiencies have to improve when your role decreases because you're more selective in your shots. You're going to be used as a gadget player and you're not going to be the guy. Yep. So the efficiency splits need to be better if your impact is going to be the level of what you're doing on high volumes. And there's like a balance and Pete Nance hasn't really found that balance.
For the sake of the argument, he is 7th in the country in true shooting percentage.
Great. Well, look what I just said. Look at my ass.
So no, it is what it is. Like
it's true though.
But I'm with you. But like, why is it when I watch it, it doesn't feel that way? I don't know. I think it's the point that you made about Davis. I love Davis. I think he's a great coach. He's allowing this team to unhinge too many times. Yeah, there has to be, and that's why they won the Michigan game straight up. Like down the stretch, they ran sets. It is what it is. It's that simple. You don't have to be a basketball genius to say that. Like they just ran plays in the final 4 minutes. Like they lost the Ohio State game the same way. Like they didn't run plays. They didn't take and play a tangible. If they're not going to be out in transition, they didn't play a tangible offensive set that made the most sense.
And they have a lot of talent, maybe the most in the country. So like that's Hubert Davis's mindset is like. Because like in college basketball, right, the talent is such a decreased level from the pro level. So coaching systems are much more important than they are at the coaching level than at the pro level because the systems and the sets and the plays that you have and the strategy you have in place needs to be interchangeable with lower talent players with other guys that you can just go to the bench and interchange and swap guys out because you don't have that talent at high supply, right? But I think North Carolina, Hubert Davis kind of just lets them go because like, hey. We're going to let our talent win because no one really has talent like this outside of a few teams. But I think that's why Baylor and Kansas and Texas Tech are always so like underwhelmingly good. Kansas and Baylor are really good examples where like, obviously they have talent, right? But Kansas barely gets like super, super high recruits. Grady is a good recruit. I think Ernest Uday is not like a massive recruit, but like Ochai Agbaji wasn't that coming out of high school. Like they develop these kids so well and they're so underwhelmingly good and so like under the radar good because of the system they have in place that does these things, and that's why they win all the time. Like that's the most successful programs.
I'm with you. I'm going to give you this one last nugget of it ties into what we just talked about a little bit, and then if you have any more, we can rapid fire them. I said in my overreaction pod a few weeks ago of the college basketball season, basically it was the equivalent of my week 1 NBA overreactions. It's hard to do that with college basketball because teams just play crap teams. So I waited 2 weeks.
There's a lot of overreaction.
There's a lot. And that's that first week. Truly, like teams really do play crap teams. Like there's
terrible. It was so bad this year. It was worse than ever.
Yeah, it was like, oh, what was that Baylor game you tweeted about at like 12 noon? It was like
the first game of the
Carleton
season. State, or maybe they just played them recently. I don't know. I forget.
Baylor against and they beat them by like 68 or something.
And I was like, yeah, it's amazing.
And so we're back. But it's cool in the moment. It's hard to overreact to that. So I waited 2 weeks. And my biggest one I walked away with was the ACC feels like a mid-major this year. It was an overreaction in the moment. Let's just be transparent. It is.
Yeah.
However, we've had a little bit of time to digest it. So, how am I going to quantify this? And is it still an overreaction in your opinion? And B, what can the ACC do? Like, there's no way to quantify like a conference's teams winning. Like, that's just you see what I'm saying. So it's tough. It's like the couple ones you brought up earlier. But where are we on the ACC as a conference this year comparative? After we talked about the Big Ten, which is why I think this is an appropriate conversation.
So I think after last year going into the tournament, it was kind of like, man, the ACC has had such a down year, and they've been on a downward trend for like the last year or two. They had a low amount of tournament teams, but they had Miami in the Elite Eight. They had North Carolina and Duke in the Final Four, and they did well. And people were like, oh, like the ACC, like, you guys are all dumb for doubting the ACC. No, the ACC is still having a down year because there's 14, 15 teams in the conference, not just 3 or 4, right? But I don't think like the Big 12 is the best conference in the country, in my opinion. The Big 10 is better. The SEC is better. I'd say the Big East is probably better this year, probably because of UConn alone right now. I think that does it. The Pac-12 is not better. It's not as, I don't think it's down to the AAC level yet. The American Athletic Conference, but it's getting close. And like Miami's been good this year, but they're not going to be a top 10 team all year. I love Miami, but they're not going to be that caliber. UVA has shown too many flaws and losing to too many teams that are just straight up better than them. They're not a top.
Still 13th in KenPom, by the way, Virginia. They're kind of holding their rating. Right. They're kind of just like in that
even
weird.
13th. Like, are they the best ACC team on KenPom?
They are. That was why I brought it up. They are.
That's a problem. Without like top tier power, you have there's no leverage for the teams at the bottom to climb up that much, right? So then it diminishes the level of the entire conference in that. So I think because of I don't think it's that great of a conference. And listen, they could have 4 Final Four teams and whatever. I'll suck that up, but
I doubt they're having 4. I doubt any conference.
That's not the point. Is that they're not?
No,
they're not going to. And like they're after those few teams, like right, Duke, and you want to say North Carolina, right, 16th. and Miami and UVA.
Yep.
I'm looking at the conference. Syracuse, no offense, but NC State, like we know they're not a great team. Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, like these are teams that are going to be fighting to get into the NCAA tournament after the top 4, and I think that shows the disparity between the better power conferences outside of the Pac-12.
For the sake of this conversation, NC State's not a good team, but they are 54th in KenPom, which is kind of awesome. I'm like, you know what? Like,
yeah, but 50, that's a good point. 54 is fighting to get into the NCAA tournament and probably not in because of all the
teams
automatic bids. So,
yep.
Well, here's a question for you. I have a question for you, ACC. Would you take the ACC or the WCC this year in terms of conference? And like, it's hard. We're not going to be able to quantify it. We'll never know what's right. But like, the better conference?
I was going to say, if you're just thinking tournament teams, I'm obviously going to take the ACC because of just the way things
not in the amount of tournament teams, but like quality overall. It's tough because the bottom of the WCC is probably so bad this year. Like,
it's really bad.
But take that into consideration. But Gonzaga is not like a number 1 team, so it kind of tarnishes that argument. But
maybe the AAC. I think it makes it more fair. I think it makes it more fair because I think that's you're kind of taking the jump below. Like if you want to make Virginia the poster child, right, and you want to make Gonzaga the poster child, like who do I like more immediately?
Want me to read you a few teams in WCC real fast?
I pulled them right up, but yeah, go ahead. Just for the listeners as well.
Yeah, Gonzaga, obviously top 10 team. They're a top 5 quality team by the time tournament comes around. We all know what happens with the Zags. St. Mary's is good. BYU. Portland is pretty underrated in my opinion. They haven't been great. Pepperdine has so much talent, but they haven't been great either. Santa Clara has been good. San Francisco has been very good. Loyola has been decent too. Like, it's a good conference.
I think I'm going to take the ACC, and I want people to understand I'm not being biased. I think
you're right.
I think the top three is just good enough to be better than the West Coast Conference. I think that's what it was. And I'm not saying West Coast Conference is 3 versus ACC's 3. I'm saying Virginia. I'm just going off KenPom right now, whether you think Virginia, Duke, and UNC are going to be the top 3 teams and Virginia Tech, whoever you think if they're going to finish in those top 3. But like I made the argument with the and I like that you brought up the NC State example, whether it's biased for me or not. You brought it up. So my argument was they're potentially going to be the 4th best team in the ACC this year.
Right.
And they, coming into the year, coming from 15th to potentially being the 4th best team, they're in no position. I'm in no position to be making that prediction. After seeing them in person 8 out of 13 times, I'm pretty confident that they can be 4th or 5th in the ACC. I think they're a really good team. But they're like, it's a drop off from, it's like cliff level, like Grand Canyon level, right? So I think if West Coast, the bottom teams stink. Like Pacific is a little bit better than, I guess, I did a skins draft where we took teams' wins and teams' losses.
Right.
And those were, each win was a point, but you couldn't have the losses. If you took the losses, you couldn't have the wins, right? Long story short, it's a fun way to see how teams do. Somebody took Pacific thinking they wouldn't have any wins in the first 13 games, whatever. They're 7-8, so
San Diego's not bad either. They're
San
Diego's the conference.
I think San Diego was also another team picked. Pepperdine hurts because I think they're just. I think I'm
they're
with you.
They're so talented.
It sucks. It's like, wait, what?
Like 4 good, really, really good players.
I'm a Matt
I have an
Stachula guy too.
interesting extra tidbit for you. I just pulled this up on CBB Analytics. It's a good website.
Follow, by the way.
Adjusted net rating by conference. Now the Ivy League is like 13th, and like the WAC right now is 2nd. So like take this with a very big grain of salt. But the ACC is currently ranked 14th out of conferences in the country in adjusted net rating. And I'm looking at like the offensive rating is not great. The defensive rating is literally awful.
Horrible. Yeah.
It's really bad. It's a big problem. And like the Ivy League, the WCC, the Southern Conference, the AAC is probably the better conversation than the WCC because Houston, Memphis, like Tulane's good. Like a lot of sleeper teams like that. I think it's a good conference. But like the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, Conference USA are all above the ACC.
That's
obviously as it plays on. But
let's bookmark that, or send it to me so that I can bookmark that and I can look at that and send it to you in 2 months and go, hey, look, they're 13th.
Remember last year going into the tournament, I remember doing bracketology almost every day at one point, right?
Yeah.
Updating it during conference championship week, and people were like, why do you only have like 6 or 7 ACC teams in? Like it's the ACC. I'm like, because the ACC is not that good. Like there's not that many teams getting in because it's not that good. And it's not just because it's called the ACC doesn't mean it's the Big 10 and Big 12 and SEC level. It just means it's just a name. It's just a name, and it's just as good as the AAC and stuff like that. So
it breaks my heart. I'm with you too. I like the American conversation because I think right now I would take the American only because ECU is actually a really good team, and they were projected they were plus 25,000 to win the conference, and they're 9-4.
Good for them.
They're 9-4, 8-1 at the. Oh my gosh, the freaking arena is already going to leave my mind as soon as I go to say it. That's hilarious. I'm going to go see a game this year because I think at this point it's due. I don't think they play.
They play host Houston.
I think they should. I don't know. They're playing one of those top teams or Memphis. I'm going to try to go to that game. I'll see when it is. But
that's just like even if deeper analytics aren't like super like great to go by for everything like this, like
it's still a fun conversation.
There's no big conference below them. There's not a single big conference below them. Every single one is like super besides the A10.
Who's the worst on that? A10 kind of hurts, but who's the worst?
It's actually not the independent conference, which is I think 2 teams or 3 teams. It's not a conference.
So who's not last that's independent or not independent? I guess.
The SWAC. The SWAC. So like it's the Grambling State, Alcorn State Conference and stuff. I think it's stuff like that. The NEC's up there and the MEAC, which is a lot of the HBCUs and stuff like that, like Howard and stuff. And
this is just one, and we can get going after that. There's one that always I root for because of the team I grew up in the backyard. Where's the Big South?
The Big South looks like a few spots, but it's 17.
17. Okay. Out of what's the number again? Total 20.
I can't even count. 17.
23, 24.
Give or take 25 or 26. I think something like that.
Too bad. That's a team that's a conference I've always followed closely. It's in my backyard basically.
It's just interesting. It's just interesting to look at like conference by conference analytics. Like obviously, like I would rather eye test it and be like, great, they have 4 really good teams or 1 really good team, and then like a few like whatever. But the bottom of the ACC is just as bad as any conference in the country, as any conference. Louisville is that bad. BC is maybe not that bad, but like there are teams that are that bad, and like it's pretty. That is a glaring hole that I didn't even think about. Honestly, I forgot about Louisville for a second.
Clemson right now is 2-0 in the conference. They're second in the conference. They're 10-3, but they've been arguably the best team in South Carolina. Florida State 4-10. They're 2-1 in conference play. Starting to get some guys back. Baba Miller's going to be back any day now. I think.
I'm excited for that.
End of next week, depending on how many games they play this week. I have to look at that. But yeah, there's a lot to be desired with this conversation. I really think I'm glad I brought it up because it hurts. Like I feel like I'm beating up on the conference that I grew up with and love and desire, but I think it's deserving to be had because I want to be honest. So, anything else before your plugs that you want to throw out there, college basketball wise, that may be resolutions?
No, I think I'm good. I had some of that Baylor playing better defense just because their defensive efficiency is like 45th, and they have been top 20 in the last 3 years, and that's what they pride themselves on. Without like Jeremy Sohan and Kendall Brown, it's tough. They have a lot of like smaller players, guard heavy. But I need them to play better defense if they're going to be a national title contender because I love them. So.
All right, I'm going to stick with the theme that I've had with every guest the last couple of weeks, and I like seeing the timeline of when these questions. This is a rapid fire. If you couldn't figure that out,
I'm ready.
But NCAA title pick right now and NBA champion pick right now.
It's okay. Got it. NBA champion pick. I'll start with that. I think it's a little easier for me. I'll go with the Bucks. I think the Bucks are. I think they'll be fine with I've seen them win without Giannis at times in the regular season. They're obviously going to be a top 3, probably a 1 or 2 seed when it comes to said and done in the playoffs. And I think because they just won, right? They've won 2 years ago, and Giannis has won a couple MVPs at this point. I think they just kind of people just like, yep, they're the Bucks, they're good, but they like to pick the Nets, everyone else, the Suns, whatever it's going to be. I'll stick with the Bucks for that. And then the NCAA tournament, it would be Baylor, but I'm not confident in them anymore. I'll say Houston, the first, non-power team to win since like the 90s or 80s or something like that it would be. But I'll say Houston right now.
I like it. That's I think the Bucks conversation is interesting. I'm going to be figuring out my timeline of what to talk about right here as we're getting close to All-Star break. And I think people are starting to back out on the Bucks a little bit, and I think I'm with you. I think I'm still there. I think there's a lot to be desired in the trade market for them and the buyout market. I think they're a team that has made a trade at the deadline, I think 5 years straight now. So they are in it and they want to win it. So
they built their team so well. It's so fun to watch them because they built their team so well around what they have. They have vets. They have everything. They have shooting. They have their defense is great, obviously, and Brook Lopez has been playing unbelievable. So
insane. And then Houston, I'm with you. I think that's where I'm going to pivot. I've made UNC the pick for 2 months, and I'm giving that up. So Houston's going to be my pick. But thank you again. Plug away, and everything will be linked down below as well.
For sure. Twitter is RyanHammer09. Everything else is RyanHammer9. It should be pretty easy to find me, I think. So I appreciate you having me on, though, as always. It's always fun. So
absolutely. Thank you for coming again. This has been the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. We'll see you later.